I don't know if you're anything like me, but my television and my telephone are flooded these days with doctors, young men and women in white coats on YouTube, telling me how to sleep, how to drink my water, how to live to be 100. And I'll be honest with you, the way only a very old woman can be. I only believe the things I have lived through myself. I am 108 years old, and I have outlived more doctors than most people will ever meet in a lifetime. For years, I suffered the way some of you are suffering right now. I could not sleep. I was up 4, 5 times a night, shuffling to the bathroom in the dark, terrified I would fall. I tried every single thing the doctors told me to try, and most of it did nothing at all. But after years of failing and trying again and failing again, I found a simple way of drinking my water that changed everything, and I do mean everything. That one change is the reason I still live in my own home today. It is the reason I have never spent a single night in a nursing home. It is the reason I have never had to ask my children or my grandchildren to bathe me or dress me or carry me up my own stairs. I am independent at 108 years old, and I want to hand you what I found for free. But I have to warn you, there is a second secret, a bigger one. Every time I go in for my checkup, the doctors look at my charts and they get very quiet and they lean across the desk and ask me the same question. Deborah, what is your real secret? And I am going to tell you exactly what I tell them, but not yet. Stay with me all the way to the end, because the real secret is not what you think it is. It is not a food, it is not a pill, and it costs nothing. My name is Deborah Jane. I am 108 years old, and I am recording this myself, sitting in my own kitchen. But before I go any further, I would love to know who I'm talking to. Leave your name and your age down in the comments. I read them. I want to make friends here, real friends, and I want us to talk about how to grow old well together. Health and a long life are sweeter with company. Now let me start with the bathroom problem, because that is the thing that stole my sleep for the better part of 30 years. I want to tell you something that took me a very long time to understand. Drinking more water during the day, the way everyone keeps telling you to, can actually make your nights worse if you do it the wrong way. I learned that lesson the hard way, and I'm going to save you the trouble. When I was in my 60s, I started waking at night to use the bathroom. First it was just once, then twice. By the time I reached 70, I was up 4 times a night. I would lie back down, and just as I started to drift off, the urge would come again, like clockwork, like a cruel little alarm. I was exhausted all day. My mind was foggy. I dropped things. I forgot names. And I'll tell you the honest truth, I was frightened, because in the dark, half asleep, an old woman walking to the bathroom is one slip away from a broken hip. And a broken hip at our age is so often the beginning of the end. I had watched it happen to 2 of my friends. So I did what you do. I went to the doctors. The first one told me it was my bladder, and he gave me a pill. That pill gave me a dry mouth and a headache and did nothing for the night time. The second one told me it was simply my age and that I should accept it. Accept it. I was not willing to accept being up 4 times a night for whatever years I had left. The third doctor told me to just drink less water altogether, and that advice nearly put me in the hospital because I got so dehydrated I grew dizzy and weak and almost fell in my own hallway. Not one of them, not a single one, told me the thing that finally worked, and it was free. Here is the first thing I changed, and it is the foundation that everything else sits on. I changed when I drink my water, not how much, when. For most of my life, I did it completely backwards, and I would bet my last dollar that you do too. I barely drank anything in the morning. I wasn't thirsty, I had my coffee, and that was that. Then in the late afternoon and the evening, I'd suddenly realize I had hardly had any water all day, and I would drink and drink to make up for it, right up until I turned out the light. Tea after supper, a tall glass of water on the nightstand, juice while I watched my evening programs. That is exactly the wrong way around, and here is why. Your kidneys do their finest work earlier in the day while you are up and moving about. So here is what I do now. First thing in the morning, before my coffee even, I drink 1 full glass of water. Then I make sure to drink most of my water before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I keep a little pitcher right on the counter, and I see to it that it's mostly empty by then. After about 4 in the afternoon, I only sip, and I stop drinking anything at all about 3 hours before I lie down for the night. When I first learned this, I felt like a fool for not knowing it for 70 years, but nobody had ever told me. I had been flooding my body with water at the exact hour it was trying to settle down for sleep. Now, there is a reason this matters far more for us than it did when we were young, and I want you to truly understand it, because once you do, you will never forget it. When you are young, your body sends out a signal at night that tells your kidneys to slow down and hold the water until morning. Think of it like a night watchman walking through a factory, telling everyone to shut things down for the evening. But as we get older, and the doctors have measured this carefully, that night watchman gets quieter. He doesn't call out the order the way he used to. So even a small amount of water in the evening, 2 or 3 glasses that would have meant nothing at all when you were 40, is now enough to keep your kidneys running all night and your bladder filling right back up. So the evening is simply not the time to drink. And I will tell you 2 more things to leave well enough alone after supper: coffee and anything with caffeine in it, and alcohol of any kind. Both of them tell that tired old night watchman to take the whole night off. A glass of wine before bed will have you up twice as often, I promise you. I gave up my evening cup of tea and moved it to the morning, and that one little change, all by itself, took me from 4 trips a night down to 3. But here is the change that surprised me the most of all, because it has nothing whatsoever to do with water. It is about salt. I'll explain it just the way it was explained to me by a kind young nurse who told me more in 5 minutes than 3 doctors had told me in 5 years. During the day, if you eat a lot of salt, and most of us eat far more than we ever realize because it hides in bread and canned soup and lunch meat and almost everything in a package, your body holds onto extra water. And that water settles down low into your legs and your ankles. You might not even notice it. Maybe your socks leave a deep red mark by evening. Maybe your shoes feel tight at night when they fit just fine in the morning. Then you lie down flat in bed, and all that water that was pooled down in your legs suddenly has nowhere to go but back up into your body, back to your kidneys, and straight on into your bladder. That is the real reason so many of us climb into bed feeling perfectly fine and then have to get up an hour later. It isn't your bladder failing you. It is the water from your legs coming back to find you in the night. And there is real science behind this, not just an old woman's notion. A study in Japan with more than 300 people in it found that simply cutting back on salt took them from waking more than twice a night down to less than 1.5 times, just from the salt, nothing else. So I cut my salt right down. I read every label now with my glasses on. I stopped buying the canned soups and the deli meats that were quietly drowning me. And I do one more little thing, and this is the trick I am proudest of in all my years. In the late afternoon, before I start fixing my supper, I sit down in my chair and I prop my feet up on a little stool about level with my hips for half an hour. I let all that water drain back out of my legs while I'm still awake and sitting up, so my body can handle it in the evening instead of at 2 in the morning. A simple pillow under your calves works every bit as well. Now here is the beautiful part, and I want you to really hear this. These 3 things, drinking your water early, leaving the caffeine and the alcohol and the water alone in the evening, and cutting your salt while you put your feet up, they do not simply add together. They multiply. Each one makes the others stronger. When I started doing all 3 of them together, I went from waking 4 and 5 times a night down to waking once, and some blessed nights, not at all. For the first time in nearly 30 years, I slept the night through. And when you finally sleep, my friends, everything changes. My mind cleared, my balance came back to me, my strength returned, and that terrible fear of falling in the dark, the fear that had kept its cold hand around my throat for years, it finally let go of me. And that, more than anything, is how an old woman gets to stay in her own home. Now, if that were all I had to give you, I would be a happy woman. Those few changes alone could give you back your sleep and your independence. But I promised you a bigger secret, the real one, the one the doctors lean across their desks to ask me about. And I have to be honest with you now, because at 108 years old, I am far too old to tell a lie. Drinking my water the right way is not the real reason I am still here. It is not the reason I am sharp and content and at peace at my age. The water fixed my nights, but something else entirely fixed my life, and it did not cost me 1 penny. Everyone who asks me my secret expects me to name a food, a vitamin, some expensive powder, some special tea, some little pill shipped in from another country. They want something they can hold in their hand and pay money for. And I understand why. We have all been taught to believe that health is something you go out and purchase. But the real secret to a long life, and a healthy one, is completely free. You cannot buy it anywhere. You can only practice it. And here it is. You must take care of your soul, because illness in the body, the great part of it, begins in the soul. I know just how that sounds, coming from an old woman in her kitchen. So let me tell you what even the scientists are now beginning to admit. They say that being sick is perhaps 30% the body and 70% the mind and the spirit. 70%. I did not learn that number from any study. I learned it from living 80 years the wrong way before I ever figured it out. I want to tell you the truth about who I used to be, because I think some of you will see yourselves in me, and I would far rather you recognize it now while you still have time than at 108 looking back. For most of my life, my youth, my middle years, all the way into my 60s, I lived in conflict, not the kind anyone could see. I never threw a plate. I never raised my voice in the street. On the outside, I was a polite, proper woman, but on the inside, my mind was at war every single day of my life. I was at war with the women I worked alongside. One of them was promoted ahead of me, and I carried that grievance like a stone in my chest for 20 years. I was at war with my relatives over an inheritance, over words that were spoken at a funeral, over who came to visit and who did not. I was at war with my husband, a good and decent man truly, but I kept a private ledger of his every disappointment, every time he forgot a date, every single way he had failed to become the man I had imagined when I was a girl. And God forgive me, I was even at war with my own children, not because they had done anything wrong, but because they did not call often enough, did not live the way I wanted them to, did not become the people I had quietly decided they ought to be. I never said most of it out loud. I simply carried it. I compared my life to everybody else's life, and I always came up short. Their house was nicer, their husband was kinder, their children were more successful. I worried about money even in the years when I had plenty. And underneath it all, every single day, I carried the deep, sour feeling that life had cheated me somehow, that I had been owed more than I was given, that people ought to be treating me far better than they did. Now I want you to hear me very clearly. That feeling, that constant, low, simmering dissatisfaction is poison. It is slow and it is quiet, and it does not feel like it is killing you, but it is. It surely is. Because here is what I finally came to understand. When you live in resentment for 40 or 50 years, your body lives there right alongside you. Your heart beats a little harder. Your blood runs a little tighter through you. Your stomach churns and sours. Your sleep grows thin and broken. You hold tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your belly, and you never once set it down. And then you pile a poor diet on top of all of it. Too much salt, too much sugar, too little care for yourself. And the long years turn the whole bitter mixture into illness. The high blood pressure, the bad stomach, the aching joints, the sleepless nights. I gave myself half my ailments with my own bitter mind, and I never even knew I was doing it. So please, I am begging you, do not waste your one and only life the way I wasted most of mine. Do not lie awake at 80 years old, rehearsing an argument from 1962. Do not let the people who wronged you keep living rent-free inside your body. It is not worth it. It was never once worth it. When I was in my late 60s, after my husband passed on, I finally learned a better way to live. I built my days around 3 simple principles, and I have lived by them faithfully ever since. Truthfulness, compassion, and patience. And truthfulness first, with myself. I stopped lying to myself about my own bitterness. I sat down and I admitted that I was an angry, envious woman, and only once I had told myself the truth could I begin to set the anger down. Being truthful means you stop pretending and you look at your own heart honestly, however ugly the thing you find there. It is the hardest of the 3, and it has to come first, because you cannot put down a weight you refuse to admit you are carrying. Compassion, second, toward other people. This one healed me more than any medicine ever could. When I truly began to consider what other folks were carrying, my husband's quiet burdens that he never spoke of, my children's own struggles. Even that woman at work who was promoted ahead of me, who I learned years later was holding her whole family together through a terrible private sorrow at the time, when I started to feel for other people instead of forever measuring myself against them. My own troubles grew smaller. That is the strange and wonderful gift of compassion. When you genuinely care about someone else's pain, you forget to keep nursing your own. And patience, third, patience in the face of suffering. There will be hard days, my friends. There will be pain and loss and sickness, no matter how well you learn to drink your water. I have learned to meet those days without bitterness now, to endure them with a quiet heart, to accept the things I truly cannot change, and to finally let go of the demand that life owes me anything at all. I believe in my own faith that meeting hardship with patience instead of resentment settles old debts and opens the way toward a better future in this life and perhaps in the next one too. You may believe differently than I do, and that is perfectly all right. But I promise you this much is true, regardless of what you believe. A patient heart heals a body faster than an angry one ever could. I did not become a peaceful woman overnight. It was a practice, the very same way the water was a practice. Every single morning, I sit quietly for a little while before the day begins. I turn the 3 principles over in my mind, and I ask myself honestly where I failed them the day before. Where was I not truthful? Where was I unkind to someone? Where did I let the old impatience and resentment slip back in through the door? Let me give you just one story, so you know I am not speaking in clouds. For 9 long years, I did not speak one word to my younger sister. 9 years over a foolish thing about our mother's old house. I had decided firmly that I was the wronged party, and I held on to that decision the way you grip a railing on the stairs. When I first began this practice, her name sat right at the very top of my list. And one ordinary afternoon, I picked up the telephone and my hands were trembling, and I called her and I simply said, "I have been carrying something against you for 9 years, and I am tired, and I would like to put it down now." She began to weep, and so did I. We had 11 good years together after that telephone call, 11 precious years that I very nearly threw away forever over a house. And do you know, the night after I made that call, I slept better than I had slept in a decade. The water heals the body, but forgiveness heals the whole person. So that is my real secret, the one the doctors lean across the desk to hear. Drink your water early in the day, leave it well alone at night, cut down your salt, and put your feet up before supper. Your body will thank you for every bit of it. But more than any of that, take care of your soul. Live in truthfulness, in compassion, and in patience. Put down the grudges you have been hauling around for half your life. They are far heavier than you know, and you do not have to carry them one single night longer. I am 108 years old. I live in my own home. I sleep through the night now, and my heart, after all of these long years, is finally light. Now do this for me before you go. Leave me your name and your age in the comments below, and tell me just one thing, one grudge or one worry that you are ready to set down at last. I will read every single one of them. We are going to grow old well, you and I, together. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Pema Chodron, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Dalai Lama 14th. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Dalai Lama 14th. Compassion is the basis of morality. Arthur Schopenhauer. Our human compassion binds us the one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learnt how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future. Nelson Mandela. A kind gesture can reach a wound that only compassion can heal. Steve Maraboli. Compassion isn't some kind of tough love or a strict regimen. It is a gentle, unfolding process. Sharon Salzberg. There is no exercise better for the heart than reaching down and lifting people up. John Holmes. Compassion allows us to bear witness to that suffering, whether it is in ourselves or others, without fear. It allows us to name injustice without hesitation and to act strongly with all the skill at our disposal. Sharon Salzberg. Until he extends the circle of his compassion to all living things, man will not himself find peace. Albert Schweitzer. The purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. Albert Schweitzer, compassion is an action word with no boundaries. Prince, wisdom, compassion, and courage are the three universally recognized moral qualities of men. Confucius, have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike. Each has their suffering. Buddha, use your voice for kindness, your ears for compassion, your hands for charity, your mind for truth, and your heart for love. Anonymous, compassion is to look beyond your own pain to see the pain of others. Yasmin Mogahed.